Thank you for tuning in and welcome to Preacher interview. My name is Michael Randle. I am an author, former pastor of two congregations, one in Chicago and in Reno, also pastor's assistant at Rock of Ages Baptist Church in Maywood, Illinois. I'm a conference leader, conference speaker, and a community organizer. And I am here at the Fairfield Baptist Church in Lithonia, Georgia, with my friend and my brother, Pastor Melvin Brooks. Pastor Brooks, good to have you here at the Preacher to Preacher interview, man.
Thank you, my friend, longtime friend and confidant, Brother Michael Randle. Good to be here with you,
Man,
my brother.
really good to be with you. I am so happy to take this opportunity to share with you some things and talk with you about some things about your ministry, and help maybe encourage some other preachers who are out there. The Preacher to Preacher concept is about touching the lives of ministers and inspiring them to be faithful to the call that God has put on their lives, and to also be faithful to their own lives and their families, and to fulfill the call that God has given to them. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share with you. And you are the first one, and I am really happy about that. If there was a large crowd here, they'd give you a standing ovation.
Wow, man.
Man.
So I'm making history today.
You're making history today,
wow,
man.
Wow. Well, God bless you, man. We go back. We go
back a long ways.
Yeah.
Rock of Ages accepted Pastor Wiley in March of 91. I joined in May of 91. It was probably about a year later or so when you and I had a real interaction and meeting, and it has been a blessing ever since. You have opened up the doors of the ministries that you served in, Center of Love, yes, Cedar Grove, and here now at Fairfield. Every church that you've pastored, I have had the opportunity not only to worship with you, but also to minister. That is quite a joy for me, and I do deeply appreciate you giving me that opportunity to share with your congregation and to share with you. And then, of course, our friendship, man, is just everything to me. Yes. So I really appreciate you, man.
Yes, man. Let me first of all, again, let me thank you, but I want to see if you remember how we really became friends.
You tested me on this, but I don't know. Let's see.
Do you remember I was coming down 17th Avenue, and it was raining. My car had stopped, and to everybody, we're talking about years ago. And my car had stopped, and you were driving a van going to pick up somebody for church, and you politely got behind my car in the van, pushed me over into a church parking lot on 17th Avenue, and then took me home, knowing that you would be late for church, but you took the time out for little old me. That's how, and we really became brothers that day, man.
Man, I'm grateful for the Lord for that.
And I hope you didn't get in any trouble.
No, I
being
didn't.
late. Yeah. So that's really how this brotherly relationship started, man. So
well, man, I appreciate knowing that. It means a lot.
Oh, yeah.
To see that something back that far, and for us to go back and remember. I think that's something that preachers ought to have. I'm an avid movie watcher, especially gangster movies.
Okay.
I like the mobster movies. And there is a saying that the mob has. It's called La Costa Nostra.
Okay.
It really only means this thing of ours.
Okay.
It's a fraternity, of course, in that case of something negative. But I think amongst the brotherhood of the cloth, the clergy person, I think there is a fraternity of pastors and ministers that should be there, so that when a preacher is in need, whether it's a spiritual need or some other need, there's some preacher who can be there as a level of support. Not every relationship will be an Elijah to an Elisha or a Paul to Timothy. Some of it is just going to be a Barnabas to Paul, whatever that relationship is. And I think that's very important, and you have proven that self. So I'm really grateful for us to have this friendship and relationship.
Yeah,
man.
well, this thing of ours, it's real. You, Randle, you've been there for me.
Bless God.
When I was, when the days were really lean, and you helped me through so much. You helped me do so much. Some things that I needed your expertise on when I was over on Pulaski Road back in Chicago, and you were always willing to help me, to show me how to do some things. I remember you teaching me how to put together the organizational chart.
Wow.
things
Wow.
like that. You brought me into Rock of Ages several times for the T.H. Wade
Yes, sir.
Christian
Yes, sir.
Education Institute
Yes, sir.
as one of the facilitators, and,
Yes, sir.
I think I gave you the most trouble being late with getting my plan in and stuff like
Oh,
that. But I thank you for always looking out for me, man. You've always been there as a dear, true, and trusted friend, man. So words can't express how much I thank you for it, man. And then to see what God has done in both of our lives,
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
how we both would end up here pretty much at the same,
Same
time.
Yeah.
And now me being your pastor, through it all.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Only God.
Only God, man. Only
Yeah,
God.
only God could have worked it out, man.
Right.
So
I watch a lot. I tend to take a seat here on the pews, not only to watch. I try to give room for all the other associates here to make sure they can do some of the things that I did at Rock of Ages, but I try to give them room because I know that if you have a need or you just want to talk,
sure.
I'm there for you. But I watch a lot, man, and you've always been an excellent preacher. That's one and the same, and a nurturing, caring, and loving pastor, and that's was seen in Center of Love, smaller congregation, but I still saw the same thing.
Yeah.
Cedar Grove, much larger congregation, more responsibilities, but still the same Melvin Brooks, and even now here, much more in your hands as pastor, and I still see the same thing, and even more so the growth of you as a person, the growth of you in ministry. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to do this interview with you, and hope that we can share a lot that people will be blessed with.
Okay,
All right, man?
All right, bro. God
Well, let's start this for those who may not necessarily know you. Let's start with the first conversational question. Who is Melvin Brooks?
Who is Melvin Brooks? Wow. Melvin Brooks is a person that I would say has been kind of like Joseph. The first 30 years of his life, it's like nothing went right. So I know Melvin Brooks is a genuine person, but has been misunderstood because of the calling that God has on his life and the plight or the steps that I've had to take. Because when you're not in overnight success, people tend to look at you a certain way, and all of us don't arrive at destiny at the same speed, or we don't take the same road, the same avenue to get there. The road that I had to take, where some took the elevator, some took the escalator, I had to take the stairway.
Wow.
And I think because of me having to take the stairway, because of all of the things that God wanted to teach me in preparation for what he had for me, I think Melvin Brooks is a person that was misunderstood a whole lot. But looking back over it now, and when I greet people now, when I see people now, I can tell in their conversation that they misunderstood
Wow.
because of the call that was on my life and the things that God had to teach me to get me to destiny.
Wow.
And so now I get everything but an apology. but I think that's who Melvin Brooks is, a person that was misunderstood because of the calling on his life, because of the steps he had to take to get there, the pressures he had to deal with. He was misunderstood.
Wow.
Yeah, but a genuine person.
Yeah, and that comes across.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how long have you been on your faith journey, kind of. Give us a brief synopsis of
Okay.
how that has been.
Well, 1964. Am I telling my age?
That's all right.
1964. I'm originally, and you've heard me talk about it several times. I'm originally from Mississippi. And my father was a deacon. My mom was secretary of the church. Came from a very strong religious background. And so, in my day as a child, they had what you call the mourner's bench. And I don't know if you know anything about the mourner's bench. Yeah. So the mourner's bench, for those of you who might watch this and don't know what the mourner's bench is, it's a bench that was put in front of the church, and children, grown-ups, or whoever that were supposed to have been seeking God or seeking conversion would take that seat until they felt the unction to get off that seat to say that they had been converted, or my dad believed that you had to feel something, you know. And so Wednesday night before the second Sunday of August, 1964, I never will forget, I got off that seat and gave God my heart as a kid, and was very serious about it. The second Sunday morning of August 1964, a few days after I got off the mourner's bench, I was baptized in a river. River called Quiver River. And my faith journey started there, August of 1964.
That's very interesting, especially that river part. That had to be a unique experience. Myself baptized in a regular pool in the church. I mean, the experience is basically the same, but still very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: who do you think, who or what has influenced your faith down through the years the most?
Down through the years the most. This this might be ironic to you, but did you ever hear of Reverend R.W. Shambach?
Yeah.
Yeah. Reverend R.W. Shambach. My brother took me down to the United Center one night.
Okay.
This was back in the 90s, because now, sure, I was in ministry at that time, staunch traditional Baptist preacher, but to really influence my ministry as far as moving into the faith arena was R.W. Shambach.
And what about him or his ministry or the teaching was it that really kind of like impacted you? Was it one thing that was said, a particular sermon or something like that? What about him that really just drew you into that?
His teaching on faith is teaching things that I'd never heard.
Okay.
That I'd never heard. Things saying to me that I could be healed.
Yeah.
You know, I could have this, and that God wanted me to have the best things in life, and God wanted to give me the desires of my heart. So we're talking the 80s and the 90s. We know and we understand that wasn't being preached in the traditional Baptist church. And so it kind of like gave me a thirst. And then I began to read Kenneth Hagin's book, The Believer's Authority, because I didn't know that we had authority over the enemy. And, you know, we could speak things into existence, and we can confess the word and just stick on the word. And keep in mind, now, this time I've been preaching several years, but I give that credence to R.W. Shambach, Kenneth Hagin, and then to my deceased beloved pastor, Pastor Curtis Brooks, who took me by the hand and began to pour in me the things of God, making my faith walk a very viable and such great of faith, pouring in me the things of God, man. Yeah.
Now you mentioned Curtis. Of course, I was privileged with the opportunity of meeting him, and just in being around with you and events that we were all at together, to fellowship with him, and based on my personal knowledge of him, Curtis was always he was a very fun-loving guy. but seemed he was very serious about his faith. So what was it? And you've mentioned something similar to him in relation to like your dad and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah.
Can you talk about a little bit about the relationship between your father and then Curtis and the role that they played in your life?
Oh man, you're gonna make me cry, bro. You're gonna make me cry. Well, my father died. I went to Chicago for the first time at 10 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and at 10 years old, there was always a bond between Curtis and I. And then when I went to Chicago at 10 years old to live with him for the summer, the bond became greater. Curtis really wanted me to live with him at 10 years old. But my father had a problem with it because he allowed Curtis at 15 years old to go to Chicago to live with
Wow.
my dad's our oldest brother, Bill.
Okay.
And so Curtis went to Chicago at 15, but wouldn't go to school.
Wow.
And so me at 10 years old, Curtis begging my daddy if he can have me. And my dad said, I would let him live with you, but I'm afraid that what happened to you, would happen to him. And so my father died when I was 13. We moved to Chicago, and so pretty much Curtis was like the wind behind my sail. Was just like a father. Did everything for me. Bought me my first pair of Converse All-Stars. Gave me my first car.
Wow. Wow.
All of that kind of thing. I was his deacon at 16 years old. I would leave Westinghouse High School, go by the church where he was to clean up the church. We were like inseparable, Doc. And so he was really like a father, man. And Curtis is one that I never even dreamed or imagined would die.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I took Curtis's death probably harder than I took my mother's death,
Wow.
because I was prepared for my mother's death. I had watched my mom in that condition for probably 18 years.
Mm.
But for someone who had been like a father to me, very rarely would anybody hear me mention Curtis as my brother. Everybody thought he was like, this is his dad, man.
Wow.
He loved Curtis, man. He just like this. And for him to suddenly die, man, that hit me in a place that I hadn't been hit in a long time, brother. That was a great relationship,
Great.
father-son relationship.
You mentioned that you were a deacon at 16. So what, and of course now you're pastor. At what age did you start preaching, and how many other roles have you played in the church, even up to pastoring?
Okay. Well, I started preaching right at 20 years old, but 16 a deacon. I was deacon, janitor, van driver. you name it. I was help with the finances. I did it all. Pretty much every position you could name that you even back in the day. And I was a youth pastor for my brother Freddie. I think
Wow.
you know Freddie. I was his youth pastor back in 1976. I've had so many roles. Church Sunday school teacher, Sunday school superintendent, things of that nature. Yeah.
And the impact on your ministry today, how has those varying roles, how has that fed into your ministry overall today?
Okay. Well, I don't believe if I had been the person that I was and being involved in those things that I was involved in coming up in the church, I don't think I would be as advanced as I am now when it comes to when it comes to, let me say, church work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I got it.
because I've had my hands on so much. I've been involved with so much where the church is concerned, so that I pretty much know how to still do so much in the church, and it has impacted my ministry because uh, there's some things. Being one who planted the church, there were some things that I never had to depend on people to do
Right.
because I had done them before.
Right.
So if God didn't provide a person to do those things, I stepped right in.
Right.
I stepped right in to do them, man. So, and I think that was great for me to have gone through the things that I had to go through, and have the knowledge that I had to do the things that I did because of all of my previous experience. And one thing I can say, Randle, God always know what He's doing.
Yeah.
Always know what He's doing, man. I helped my brother fronts, all of this kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
So when I would purchase a storefront or rent a storefront, I already had it in me.
You know what to do.
Yeah, I knew what to do. Get a ladder, get you a hammer, get you some paint, and just go in and get to work, man. Yes, sir.
So, when did you start preaching, and what kind of description would you give to how you knew that preaching was where you were going?
Well, I knew as a kid. I'm a little kid, man. Little boy. I always wanted to hang around the preacher,
Right.
stuff like that. So, at our little country church in Mississippi, every pastor we ever had, that's what they would call me, preacher,
Wow.
preacher, preacher, preacher. And I just always knew that would be my calling.
Right.
And who really, really, really instilled it, man, was this preacher named Reverend C.L. Logan. He was my boyhood pastor.
Wow.
Would never forget him, man. And he was, matter of fact, the first pastor I remember. He gave me the nickname Preacher. Yeah. And so at 9 years old, the day that President Kennedy was assassinated. So the principal of the school, I was fourth grade. Back in the day, the principal lived on the campus, a house somewhere on the campus for the principal, and my fourth grade teacher was Mr. Blackman. And so Mr. Blackman was summoned by the principal to go across the yard to watch the happenings of the assassination of President Kennedy. And I'm 9 years old. I'm sitting at the desk. Never will forget it. Said to me, President Kennedy has just been killed. The principal comes back to the room. I'm 9 years old. The principal comes back to the room and asks, you all could never guess where I've been? I raised my hand. This is the gospel truth.
Wow.
The principal asked, can anybody guess where I've been? And I said, yeah. Raised my hand. Said, where? I said, President Kennedy just got killed. And he almost passed out. Really, seriously, man. He almost like, what? How do you know that? What? And I'm saying, no, I was just sitting at the desk and something said to me, the President Kennedy.
Wow.
Just got killed. This is the truth, man.
Wow.
I knew then that it's something brewing in me somewhere, And then at 15 years old, God plainly showed it to me. He plainly showed it to me that's what it was. And I spoke to my mom about it. First words, well, you better go and do it before the Lord do this and the Lord, you know how it goes. But I ran from it. For probably 4.5 years until the first in February 1975, I think it was. The Lord just plainly knocked it out of me in church, 4505 with Harrison in Chicago.
Wow.
I
Couldn't run anymore.
Yeah.
So now, as discussed earlier, we talked about the fact that you've been so kind to allow me to speak in every church that you've pastored, 3 churches particularly. So you've pastored Center of Love, pastored, you organized and pastored Center of
Yeah,
Love,
sure.
pastored Cedar Grove. There was a transition there because eventually a name change even occurred. And now you've moved from the north to the south, here to Atlanta. What has those transitioning moments been like for you as a pastor and and more, as for Melvin Brooks as a person? What has those transitioning moments been like?
From the transition from Center of Love to Cedar Grove Baptist Church in Buffalo was quite easy for me as a person, first of all, because I really wanted to leave. I really wanted to leave Chicago. I felt that I had given it everything I had, and it's like it just wasn't turning. But when you look back over it, it was training ground. It was training ground. And if it had turned more than it did, I never would have reached out for anything else. So God always know what He's doing.
Right.
But going to Buffalo, God had prepared me for that transition. He had prepared me for that type situation. Not to speak anything negative about the great Cedar Grove Baptist Church, but it was a situation that I was a perfect fit for. And when you are a perfect fit, it makes things a little bit easier. I was exactly what the church had prayed for. They had prayed for someone my age. They had prayed for someone my experience. They had prayed for someone with that would be married as long as I had been married. I mean, I was just an answer to their prayer. So that made the transition much easier. There were some things that I had to deal with, of course, but God had prepared me for those things, and He had given me the temperament and the demeanor to deal with them the way that He wanted them dealt with. So that transition was kind of like a simplified transition. Coming here to Fairfield Baptist Church, I didn't want to, because I had done so much in Buffalo. God had positioned us to. We were in a great position. We had done well. Had purchased this campus with acreage, and we could now do ministry. We could do things pertaining to education. We could do administration. We are positioned for this now. The building had 18 classrooms, 3 parking lots, offices. The sanctuary was great size. All that kind of had our own park. So we're positioned for ministry. So I'm saying I'm set now.
Right.
And so I wasn't looking to do anything different. But then this was put before me by God, and I begged God not to. I begged Him not to, and the reason I begged Him not to was because of some things that I had been faced with in Buffalo, and I didn't want to be faced with that again. Coming to a well-established traditional church, I knew what it would be like, and also the transition for me personally is not an easy transition personally, because I've never liked the South. I left the South as a boy, young teenage boy, and my recollection of the South is back then.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so that's the way I would see the South. You know, trees and woods and gravel roads, you know, and stuff
Right.
like
Right.
that. So I just never liked the South. So personally, I'm adjusting. Transition wise, it's a process. Yeah.
And speaking of that, so now if you're pastoring three churches, you're now here in Atlanta area, Lithonia, Georgia, exactly. You pastored in Buffalo for some, what, 18 years. Uh, although Chicago was not your born home, you were basically home in
Home,
Chicago
yeah.
because you basically kind of grew up there for the most part.
Yeah.
You just established yourself there. Your family was there. What has pastoring, or what type of impact has pastoring made on the Brooks family, specifically your immediate family, starting with First Lady Sister Doris and then your children? What kind of impact has that had on your life?
Well, it has had good. It has had what I consider, because of family. I would say everything has not been so good, but the good, it has positioned me to do for my family the things that I've always wanted to do,
Right.
and that is to take great care of my family,
Right.
to be there at their beck and call, especially when they need something.
Right.
But to the physical presence, the physical presence, I don't wish it on anybody. The physical presence, you know, missing, not being there physically.
Right.
Buffalo at a time when my baby was, I think, 16.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
can you imagine when she was 16,
She was 16.
and now she's 36. So and me not wanting to take her away from
Yes,
what
sir.
she's accustomed to,
Yes, sir.
Proviso West High School,
Yes, sir.
to come to Buffalo to finish her last year, leaving her there. At the time when I went to Buffalo, I think I only had 3 grandkids, and leaving my daughters, you know, my physical presence. The good, yes, I can do for them.
Right.
Anything they ask me to do, I'm able to do it. But the physical presence,
Just
Dad,
being there.
yeah, just being there, the hug, to touch, to sit on the side of their beds, them to sit on the side of my bed. Dad, I got a problem.
Right. Right.
Now it's like, okay, I can send you this, but I don't know when I can get there, you know, unless it's an emergency. I really regret that, man. That has not worked well with me inwardly, and it has not worked well with my children inwardly. And my prayer is that God will someday deem it necessary that I'm back with my family, man.
I'll ask some more questions in a moment, but you raised a point, and I want to just share this with you. I don't know if I've ever said it. I was celebrating, Mission of Faith was celebrating my 5th or 6th year of pastoral service in Chicago. And I had asked if they would allow, Melissa was coming more so, she was coming to service as my daughter. She was a little more frequently, and it's easier for her to get there. Antoine still lived way out there near far northwest suburbs, so he could rarely get there. But I asked on this anniversary if they would allow my children to say something. And of course, at the time, Melissa spoke to on Vanetta's half at that time, and then Antoine spoke on my behalf. Antoine said something. He said, "What you all don't know is what I've seen in my dad." And he said he travels a lot, because I was going to a lot of conventions and all that stuff. I was president of the state for the Southern Baptist Convention, and I was trying to serve in the National Baptist Convention. So I was traveling to 2 national meetings, state meetings. I was on the state boards. I was traveling a lot, left the house a lot. Antoine said, "Dad, you left a lot."
Yeah.
But we really never missed something because every morning when you left, you came by the bed and you sat with us
Right.
and you talked with us. And you always told us when you were on the way back. So there was something they missed a lot,
Yeah.
but yet they still found a way to come. And I could see, I get the privilege of knowing Shanette and
Yeah.
knowing your daughters and
Yeah.
seeing them around you. I'm sure, on a very personal level, there are some parts that they wish they could have had differently.
Oh, yeah.
Because it happens to all pastors.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
that they wish they could have differently. But I can tell that they don't act as if there was a neglect in
Oh,
there.
no. No, it was never neglect.
And
Funny, it was a few weeks ago, Shanette called, and I was getting ready to come to the church, and I said, okay, well, I'll talk to you when I get to the church if it's not important. Here you go again, that church. Yeah, so
Exactly.
but they know
They know.
that's been my life. That's been mom and dad's life. And all my kids know me as is a preacher. You know, I've been preaching since that's when they were born. I was a preacher, and it has its ups and downs. But the physical presence is what I really miss.
Now, in part of that question, there was in relation to Sister Brooks, and I want to preface the question about the impact for her with this. I've always admired pastors who seem to have a certain level of character in relation to their personal life, specifically with their spouse. And you may never have known this unless this opportunity have came to me to say it.
Okay.
One person that I've always appreciated was Dr. A. Lewis Patterson.
Okay.
In relation to his personal life.
Yeah.
Because everywhere that I can tell that A. Lewis Patterson went, Sister Patterson was always with him.
Close by.
Well, in the years that I've known you, I'll call you. You say, man, I'm on my way out of town.
Yeah.
Sister Brooks is always with you. So, I mean, that means ministry has impacted her.
Oh, sure.
What has been the strength that kept you all managing life, managing family, managing household, managing marriage, through all the ups and downs of ministry?
You know what it's been? My wife's prayer life. You can imagine. It's been my wife's prayer life, my wife's consistency with God, my wife's relationship with God, and my wife being this genuine person who understands her calling and her place in my life and her place in ministry. Humble as a lamb, very understanding, and matter of fact, it was just today or yesterday I was praising her. I said, girl, you've been with me down through the years. Everywhere we've gone, you followed me from Chicago to Buffalo, from Buffalo to Latonia. I said, you've been with me, and God put us together. God gave me everything that I need in a wife for this journey, for all of these transitions and everything. When I'm down, she's up. Very rarely will she get down, but if there are some down moments, then I'm up to console. She walks me through it by faith. She lays hands on me in my sleep. She grabbed me before I leave out of the house, coming to the office, praying for me. When she's reading her daily bread, look, honey, look, I want you to read this. When she come across a scripture that she got some revelation on. Look at this. Look at this. I think this will help you through your day. I think this will help you through your meeting. Stuff like that. So she's just been a jewel, man. My wife was called to this, not wearing the name preacher or anything, but she was called to this, and that's why once we got to Buffalo, we became inseparable. In Chicago, there were too many distractions for us for us to be inseparable. I had Randle, I had Wiley, I had Eddie Jenkins. Just to throw out a few names. But too many distractions for us to be inseparable because all of my friends were there. Everything I had was there. But going to Buffalo, a small town off the beaten path, we really became one. Right. And then learning to be the one in Buffalo, coming here to this brand new environment, we don't know anybody, and we say to each other sometime, well, all we got is each other. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's great, man. Now, I remember while in Buffalo, you did some things to get some more education. So this is a question on education. Would just kind of describe what is your level of education and how has that kind of meant something to you?
I'm asked quite often about my education level, and I this is what I say, because I said to someone one time, I said, I don't like to really itemize what I have on the wall. I say, but I do have some degrees, earned, that I, earned degrees.
Yes, sir.
I have a degree in community and human services. I have a degree in business management and economics with a concentration in organizational leadership. Have a degree in biblical studies. But I started college in 1972 when it wasn't like it is now. Back then, all you had to do was study for the test.
Wow.
Go in and answer the question, turn your test paper in, and leave. But I wanted to go back to school, and I went back at 59 years old because I saw that it was so different, and I also wanted my grandchildren to witness me walking across the stage.
Wow.
Earning a degree, so they wouldn't have an excuse.
Wow.
So they wouldn't have an excuse. But to answer your question, how has it impacted me? I think what school did for me, Reverend, is help me develop a study pattern.
Great.
A study pattern, keeping me reading and keeping me reading anything, and no matter what it is, a magazine, a newspaper,
right,
Sunday school book, a commentary, whatever. It doesn't have the directions on the medicine bottle. I think that's how school has impacted me, and I think that's how it has impacted my ministry, because if leaders are readers,
yes, sir,
and readers can be leaders, but leaders have to be readers,
yes.
And that's what education has done for me. It has kept me reading, and it keeps me reading current things, know. And I still refer back to some antiquated stuff because antiquated stuff is very good. But really, that it has taught me to develop and maintain a study pattern. Yeah.
When you talk about readers, in the book Faithfulness Pays Off, I make this statement because Pastor Wiley pushed reading and studying personal development, and especially in relation to sermons. And I always make this statement. With little reading, we preach little thoughts. With much reading, we preach better thoughts. But with no reading, we ain't preaching with any thought at all.
No thought at all.
And so I can see that. Now, if you don't mind, you preach here at Fairfield, you tend to preach 2 different sermons. What is your study practice to develop that kind of thing? Because I in my Preacher to Preacher post, I'm generally posting a sermon every week. Even though I'm not opportune to have to preach, to preach on a Sunday, I still put the sermon out. So I can understand how taxing that could be. What is that practice like? What do you do on Mondays? What kind of practice do you have for preparation like that?
Let me say to you, first of all, it's very rigorous. Very, very rigorous to preach 2 different messages, and you're preaching to the same congregation, and hopefully that will be changing real soon.
Right.
I start preparing because I don't do anything on Mondays, so I'm usually a week ahead.
Okay.
a week or two ahead
Right.
with skeletons,
Yeah.
with thoughts.
Yeah.
You know, you come to my house, you see a page of thoughts. You know, open up a book, you see where I scribble some on the page. See a receipt from the store, you see where I scribbled an idea or a point, or tried to complete 3 alliterations or something. You might just say, but it takes so much time. So what I mostly do, by Thursday, I try to have all of my data, all of my research, and everything. I try to have that done by Thursday. Now, remember, Monday I'm free, Tuesday mostly meetings, Wednesday 2 Bible classes and some meetings, and so I'm usually, and then Saturdays is pretty much all day.
Yeah.
From the time I get up until the time I go to bed, I'm trying to finish typing, putting the final touches, putting the order to it, and stuff like that. So my entire week is pretty much tied up with sermon preparations. Yeah. So I put a lot of time in. To say I do 20 hours, I don't know. To say I 15 hours, to say 30 hours,
Right,
I don't know.
right.
But I put a lots of time in, because what I try to do, my messages are mostly, if you can tell, they're mostly research messages. You can tell that I did do homework.
Yes, sir.
And so that takes a lot of time. And then exploring your library to see who said what about the subject, and trying to come up with the contextual idea and cultural background,
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. It takes a whole lot of time. So I've really put my time in it, man. So
What would you describe? I mean, now, of course, you may know of and may have known personally preachers from across the country. Had the opportunity to preach for a number of great preachers. You and I can name a host of preachers who are good at one thing versus another. But when it comes to certain styles of preaching, expository has kind of been pushed a lot over the last few years. So we can go down the list of guys, H.B. Charles, Tolan Morgan, Ralph West.
Oh, God.
These guys who are being accepted across the country
Yeah.
as well-known expository preachers. How would you describe your sermons? Are they primarily expository? And I mean, I got the privilege of hearing it, but I want to kind of have it.
Well, sometimes it's one style I stay away from is probably topical.
Okay.
Very rarely do I do topical messages, unless I'm doing a series on something. Yeah, then I do a topical. Textual, not too often, but because you can. My favorite style is expository.
Right.
Because you can take an expository sermon, and it can be textual, it can be topical.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and you can just take an expository sermon and just gut it.
Right.
You know, just rip it apart. You know, where you can't do that with a textual or topical sermon, but you can take an expository and you can cover A through Z.
Yes.
So that's why I think expository preaching now is really the going, let me say, the going rate, the going rate for preaching, because you can do so much. It's expository sermon is just like Luther Vandross was with his voice. You can just play with it.
Just do what
you can just play with it, man. Yeah.
Are there parts of, this is back to pastoral ministry, are there parts of pastoral ministry that humble you or cause you fear?
Yes. Yes, and yes. The part that humbles me, and I hope when our friends or our acquaintances watch this, that if whatever they've ever felt about me, or whatever they've ever thought about me, that they would grab this as from my heart. what humbles me about pastoral ministry and me pastoring is God trusts me
My,
with his people.
my.
That humbles me. God trusts me with his people, Randle, because don't nobody but God
My Lord.
know me like I know me, man.
Yeah.
And God trusts me with his people.
Right. It's both a burden
Yes.
and a blessing.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of young preachers may look to it, and as a in the time, especially in at Rock of Ages, because I was privileged for being in full-time ministry, but yet not pastoring.
Yeah.
So you get to see so much, and sometimes you're like, man, boy, it'd be great to have that opportunity.
Yeah.
But when you put that weight on you to know that the people of God have been assigned to you by the Lord, it's a burden, and then yet you get the joy of having them love you and care for you and all that stuff. But still, like when I put out a lot of my posts, or preacher to preacher, hey, look, I put out what are you complaining about?
Yeah.
You got this
That was a good one.
opportunity to look to what God has given you and to serve, and that's a great blessing.
And let me also make mention of the fear. The fear. The fear is that I don't want to cause any of his sheep to stumble.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be the reason that you stumbled. I don't want to be the reason that you fail.
Mm-hmm. That whole the millstone
yeah. I don't want to be the reason. That creates the fear and this reverential fear that I have. I have this reverential fear for the pastorate.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and the fear that, as Noah Jones puts it, that I'm too old to spill the coffee now.
My.
I'm too old to spill the coffee, man. The fear that I'm too old to live things down. If I were 30, 35, 40, and I'm trusting God, man, to keep me at this age. Lord, keep me. I don't want to spill the coffee now, God.
Right.
You blessed me through youthful mistakes, and
my Lord,
some stuff was intentional.
Right.
You shielded me, you covered me, Lord. And things that people saw, things that people heard,
my God,
those things were true, but you gave me longevity to live it down, Lord. I don't have that time anymore. So the fear now, Lord, I don't want to mess up.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now only one or two more questions. You more mature now.
Yes.
What would you, at your age now, say to Melvin Brooks 30 or so years ago? What would you say to that young preacher?
Wow. When I saw that as a question, I came up with something that I wish someone had said to me. To a 30-year-old Melvin Brooks, I would say, watch your indulgences. Yeah. Watch your indulgences. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I didn't do.
Wow.
At 30.
That, you got
caught
just
you
a
with
few,
that one.
Yeah, because you got just a couple of years on me, lifespan, but we've walked a lot of the similar journeys.
Yeah.
And I can still remember some people sort of giving me those early warnings.
Yeah.
You know, and young preachers would do well to be careful,
Yeah.
not to allow the youthful mistakes,
Yes, sir.
to creep into their lives, thinking that, hey, we can just get away. No, because as we note through Scripture, sin has consequences.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Mistakes have
Yeah.
things that have to be.
Oh yeah.
If you make a mistake, I'll never forget this. I had a car that I was trying to fix, and they didn't have a lot of money, and I was trying to put in a spark plug, and I stripped the threading inside the engine, and I was able to get a lot of the little pieces of the threading out, and had to rethread that, and it was such a painstaking task to get that done. And as you state, at this age, we're at that place where, oh man,
Yeah.
you don't got no room for no mistake. But
Yeah.
the literal truth is, at whatever age we are, we really don't have room for that.
No.
And you don't want to have to try to live down
Right.
something
Yeah.
that's way out of your control.
Right. And now we don't have time anyway
Right.
to live it down. People forgive you for youthful mistakes, but for me now to make certain mistakes, hey, what's wrong with that fool?
Right.
At his age.
Right.
And so I came up at a time, you know these guys, when it was just pretty much Johnny Miller, Gregory Macon, and myself were like the three young preachers
Right.
on the west side, where
Yes, sir.
Johnny was probably maybe 3 or 4 years than me, and I was probably 3 or 4 years than Macon. But we were like the three west side young preachers. Well, so I came up at a time where the only ones we had to hang with were older guys, and these older guys taught us what we call the ropes. You understand what I'm?
Yeah.
They taught us the rope, and so that's what I'm saying when I say, not only watch your indulgences, would I have watched my indulgences, but I would have also watched my allegiances.
My goodness.
Yeah, because my allegiances were to some wrong things for wrong reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I got one now, second to the last. One of America's most well-known, most loved pastors will be celebrated this weekend, Dr. Clay Evans. He was it's like if you're a preacher from Chicago specifically and you don't know who Clay Evans is or haven't had the privilege of just being with him. I posted a picture. He preached for me in Chicago, and he called me son. He may not have known a lot of me, but Clay don't have to know a lot.
Right.
If he met you, he gonna call you son.
Boy.
So, name some other older ministers or senior pastors or ministers who have had like that kind of impact on your life, where they did something, they touched you, or they impacted your life. Name a list of guys who were that, whether they're gone on to glory or whatever.
Yeah, pretty much all that I would name would be gone, because I go back like 45 years, and because I'm pretty much afraid to put this name out, because I know our friends in Chicago is going to be watching it. But one person that stands out for me, who was very instrumental. He died about 2 months after I went to Buffalo. Was, everybody close your ears, was Reverend Fred Daniels.
Wow.
Reverend Fred Daniels, who everybody thought, and well, everybody knew was crazy. But Fred saw something in me. Fred saw something in me, and we had such a great relationship. And Fred is the one that instilled in me that, man, and this is not, this is just what he said to me.
Right.
Man, you got something.
Mm.
Man, you got something. And Fred began to introduce me to Southside broadcasts.
Mm. Yeah.
Like Fellowship,
Right.
Omega, Edmund Blair,
Yeah. Yeah.
my young self preaching. You remember WVON was
Yeah.
the thing,
Yeah.
Doc.
Yeah.
So you had Edmund Blair, Joe Wells, 11 o'clock on Sunday mornings, WVON. So if you hit that broadcast live, and I'm 22, 23 years old, Doc.
Yeah.
You hear me, Rev?
Right.
You hit that broadcast live, WVON, the #1 station in Chicago. You 23 years old, you hit that broadcast on Sunday morning live while everybody's on their way to church.
My.
They listening to you. You got me?
Yeah.
Then you go back like 7 o'clock to his FM broadcast. You walk out of there, you go to Blair, WVON at 8 o'clock on Sunday night. Doc.
Wow.
And we talking about who were considered the preachers
Yeah.
of Chicago. So these are the people that Fred Daniels put me in touch with. Then Fred introduced me to my dear friend. We called him Blind Moore, C.L. Moore.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
C.L. Moore. Fred said, man, listen, if I connect you with Moore, man, and you start driving Moore around, Doc, you'll preach all over this country. And I started driving Moore around.
Wow.
Preaching all over the country. And here's the thing that blows everybody's mind. Moore connected me so in Detroit, Reverend. I never will forget Moore getting on the phone, calling Reverend C.L. Franklin, Reverend. And at 8 years old, Reverend, 8 years old. Now, Fred Daniels, that was a question about.
Yes, sir.
But Fred Daniels led me to all of the rest. But at 8 years old, we left out of the cotton field to go to Cleveland, Mississippi to see. Everybody else went to hear him, but I went to see him, Reverend C.L. Franklin.
Wow.
Everybody else went to
hear
hear him.
You went to
At 8 years old, I went to see him because I was accustomed to, it was a station playing out of Nashville, WLAC, where they would play his records every night. And I would be sitting at the radio like, man, I'm spellbound. And so we go to Cleveland. Notice, everybody else went to hear him. I went to see him. Him and the Staple Singers were the pre-show to sing until it was time for him to preach. He preached Dry Bones in the Valley. And I'm sitting in the stands at 8 years old, man. And I said to my mom, Mama, one day I'm going to preach for him. She said, oh, boy. And Reverend, at 24 years old, Moore was Frank's assistant. He said, Frank, my little friend is in town. And he said, well, send him over Sunday morning.
Wow.
The first Sunday morning of December 1978, Reverend. Never will forget. She's going on to be with the Lord. I called my mom. I said, Mama, guess where I'm preaching that Sunday morning? She said, you in Detroit, you must be preaching for Reverend C.L. Franklin.
Wow.
And I said, you remember I told you when I was a little boy that I was going to preach for him, Reverend. All of that happened because of Fred Daniels. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. And, because I often think in terms like when I got the message that Dr. Evans had passed, I was at work at the time, and everybody was posting pictures of them with him, and I just couldn't because I thought I had some pictures on my phone, but they weren't. They were at the house, and I was just feeling that angst to get home just to note I had that connection too. So I can imagine that
Oh, yeah.
having that connection, especially with somebody, C.L. Franklin and
Oh,
all
yeah.
the others.
Oh, yeah.
And I had the privilege of seeing and hearing Moore preach
Oh, yeah.
and watching
oh,
him.
yeah.
I'd never forget when how blind Moore got off of Rock of Age's pulpit
Yes,
to
sir, Doc.
walk that aisle.
Yeah.
I'll never know.
Mhm.
Wiley says all you have to do is walk him through one time,
One time,
and he
got it.
remembered and he got it.
And he got
So
it.
I
Doc.
can imagine that had to mean a lot,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
around their legacy.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
with all of those things, uh, preaching for the years, doing ministry, having the privilege of pastoring the churches, now being here in Atlanta, and you and I have had the many private conversations about what is possible for Fairfield under your leadership, with my support in any way as a minister, as a friend, as well as my own ministries that I'm doing, like the Preacher to Preacher piece. All of that still means that you have to take care of you. So
Right.
one question that me and my friend thought was very important is this last question.
Yeah.
With all that you do, man, how do you take care of you?
Good question. Out of all that I do, I try to get as much rest and as much relaxation as I possibly can. I set time aside for me because you notice sometimes I'm moving back and forth from Chicago to Buffalo, back here, trying to make sure things are straight. But I always find time to rest. I find time to sit still. I find time not to answer the phone. I find time not to answer a text message. And just get to myself in solitude and refresh my mind and let God refresh my body, restore what I poured out, my thing is finding time for solitude, and letting God restore everything back to you that you put out to his people. And that's how I take care of myself. Just resting because you have to. Yeah.
Right.
We give out so much. We pour out so much.
Right.
So you have to find time to just rest. Not think, not write a sermon, not do research, not talk to Randle.
Right.
Just
No
rest.
wonder you didn't answer that call.
Because every time I talk to Randle, it's about a book. So I have to be careful what I say. If I say hello, he's going to make a book out of it. So I just choose sometime not to talk to anybody, not to do anything. The wife and I we're in the house.
Right.
Watching TV or just relaxing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, letting God restore back to us what we poured out. And that's how it works for me. Just relaxing sometime.
Well, man, I can only imagine. I even, again, it was very purposeful for me in my time of pastoring, and even now as an author, I do the same thing. I try to take time and I just don't do nothing. I watch something silly on TV so that I won't have to think.
Andy Griffith.
Right.
Beverly Hillbillies.
Anything
Watching the Beverly
silly,
Hillbillies last night.
just so that I won't have to think, man.
Yeah.
Well, man, I'm grateful that you would give me this opportunity, especially that it's the first Preacher to Preacher interview, and I hope that it is as edifying to you as I believe it is to me, and that for those who get a chance to view it, that they are edified and that they are touched by it. And I pray all the time, and I pray that your ministry here at Fairfield is continuing to flourish, and that all that you hope that the Lord would do for you and do through the people here would be manifested in your earlier times here at the church, and that the church itself finds because I think people miss this. Pastors tend to miss it, I believe, and we don't really pay attention to this. My prayer is that as you are ministering as a pastor here to the Fairfield family and in the Atlanta area, that the people are seeing more of God's work, not only through you, but through those who are impacted by the ministry. And that's my prayer. and that I pray that God just continues to flourish and blesses you, man.
Well,
thank you so very
Thank
much.
you so much, man. Thank
Bless
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
Love you, brother.
Love you too, brother.
Much, man.
Thank you for being a part of the Preacher to Preacher interview. I want to introduce two books. I'm going to read these books are now released. Preacher to Preacher, sermon outlines, one sermon from every book of the Bible. And I'm sure those preachers who love those sermon outlines, if you don't get nothing but the points, if you don't get nothing but the title, whatever you get out of it, it will be a blessing. And then the second book is a book devotional guide for times of spiritual warfare. It's called Look for the Light on the Other Side of Darkness. This book is meant to guide you through 7 weeks of devotional study to help you learn how to fight the spiritual battle. I literally, in the preparation of writing this book, had to look at what I've gone through over the last 3 years of my life in order to know that there were 7 particular areas of my life that I wanted to focus on. What to do in times of grief, what to do in times of sadness, what to do in times of fear. And I found the things that the Lord led me to, and that's what these books are. So I had asked those of you who are listening and or viewing this broadcast, go over to Amazon.com, get a copy of the book. Just search my name. You'll see 10 other books there, and you'll be blessed by the books. I want to thank you again, man, for being a part of this. I want to thank our friend Cleon for helping us.
Thank you, Brother Cleon.
He's a great brother, and
Yes.
I thank you all for being a part of it.
All
Thank you again, man.
Thank you, man.
God bless you.
God bless. Good to be first. All right.
All right.